What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Hacker Daily. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's very important to me as a cybersecurity professional. We're going to be talking about the cyber kill chain. Now, what this does is it sort of orients somebody towards what a persistent threat actor is going to be trying to do. Early in my cybersecurity career, I really felt like I had sort of all this useless knowledge. I knew how to use these tools, I knew how to do these things, but I really didn't know what a full-blown scenario would look like out in the business world. And this sort of orients people to that and lays it out in a really easy to understand kind of way. This is something that was developed by Lockheed Martin in conjunction with the military, and it's, again, just a really simple way to educate people and orient people as to what a threat actor is going to be trying to do. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So again, this is talking about an advanced persistent threat. So what that really boils down to is that it's somebody who has something very specific in mind, and it takes them months to do it. They're very slow working, and they have a very serious and straightforward intent. And what this does is it makes them incredibly hard to detect. So the idea of the cyber kill chain is to give, professionals and people in the business world something to look at, some way to understand what these people's sort of general steps are. The first step in the cyber kill chain is going to be reconnaissance, and there are two forms of reconnaissance. There's active and passive. Passive reconnaissance is something that we'll talk about in our next video, which is basically using Google and Shodan.io and things like that to harvest information about your target. This would be emails, conference information like is listed on the screen, and things like that. Passive reconnaissance is the safest way for an attacker to gather information because it's really difficult, if not impossible, for their target entity to stop, because they're not actually touching the target. They're not doing anything. They're just simply looking around the internet for information about the target. Now, there's also active reconnaissance. This is where you actually sort of quote-unquote touch the target. This is things like using Nmap to scan their networks, their ports, to actually lay out what it is that you're trying to attack. When you do this, it creates a lot of what we call noise, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's really easy for businesses and corporations and things like that to detect when somebody is doing active reconnaissance for the most part. There are ways that you can make this better for yourself if you're the threat actor, such as, using Tor and masking your IP address and MAC address and things like that, but you're actually sort of probing the target. You're seeing what happens with things. And that makes it really easy for the target to detect you if you're the threat actor in this scenario. So we'll get more into reconnaissance later. Again, I'm going to break down each of these steps for you guys in detail and sort of show you the tools of the trade and, the tricks and things like that and how these things are done. But this is just a general video to sort of go over this. Next up, we have weaponization. So whenever you do reconnaissance, you're sort of looking for what is listed on this page as the back door. You're looking for a way in. A lot of times this would be getting a bunch of email addresses and sort of maybe figuring out some personal information about employees and then launching a spear phishing campaign. Spear phishing campaigns actually account for around 80 to 90% of business exploits. And computer negligence and security negligence through employees is one of the most common ways that businesses and corporations get compromised. So for me personally, I would look more for phishing campaigns and, mass emailers and things like that to be the back door, and then the payload to be integrated into an email. But this isn't always the case. For instance, if you're using Apache 2.10.1 for your web server and somebody realizes that, they could use a Heartbleed exploit on it because that's a really outdated version of Apache. So you would still have to use a backdoor to get that payload in the door, but with such an outdated version of Apache, it wouldn't be that difficult. And that also comes back to reconnaissance and just the things that you're trying to find out. So then we have delivery, which is what I was talking about. So how you're weaponizing your exploit and how you're getting it to the target. So you have this. Think of your exploit as a package and your backdoor as the door of somebody's house. You have to get it there somehow. So your delivery is UPS. Okay, so this, I would say, would most commonly be email, and then you also have, if you're on the web security or network security side of things, and you're dealing with web servers and things like that, you would want to look for SQL injections, and maybe some cross-site scripting stuff. But that's, I don't want to say easy to deal with, but it's not super complicated if you know what you're doing. In the case of the Pentagon, a USB drive is basically the devil, because it's happened a couple of times that I'm aware of to the Pentagon where some malicious person left a USB drive laying around, and somebody picked it up and decided to see what was on it, and then all of a sudden their entire system was compromised. I would say the most common one out in the world right now would be email. Emailing people with spear phishing campaigns is the number one way to deliver exploits, deliver, sort of malicious packages, and gather information, and gather very important information. You can use emails and cloned websites to gather people's banking information, their credit card information, and this is, multiplied much worse when it's, an executive at a business or something like that. And so then you can sort of rummage your way through everything. So moving on, we have exploitation. Now this is actually using the vulnerability to execute. On this, it says code on the victim's system. This would basically just be getting somebody to click on something. It would be harvesting credentials. This is sort of the actionable thing. The cyber kill chain is more oriented towards persistent threats that want to get into large corporations and things like that, as opposed to people who just want to get in, get some information, and get out. Exploitation, a good example of that would probably be Marriott and their most recent kind of screw up, where all their POS systems were essentially harvesting credentials for somebody else and they didn't know it. And I think it was like 51 million people's personal information was stolen. So that would be a form of, exploitation. Installation would be the next step. So once those people have gained those privileges, gained access and things like that, they want to install more malware on the target. They want to, get more access, get more information, and continue to mine and continue to do things. This is really where you start opening up the target. So up until this point, everything has just sort of been, okay, I hope this works. I hope these security measures aren't in place, and I hope I can get around them if they are. Once that malware gets installed, everything really starts to open up from the viewpoint of an attacker. So not really too much to be said there. There are plenty of ways to do remote installations if somebody has packages on their computer, or in some cases of business, it could even be a physical installation with somebody physically present at the machine. Moving on. So you have command and control. So that's remote manipulation of the victim. So this is what you would think of as somebody messing with your screen or something like that. I think that's a really common image that people get, is all of a sudden their computer starts doing really weird things and doing things that it's not supposed to. But what this actually is it gives the attacker a outlet, sort of a link, if you want to think of it that way, a digital Ethernet cable back to their computer. So that they can remotely, sort of behind the scenes, do what they want while the victim isn't present at the computer. This is pretty much where everything has gone to hell in a handbasket for a business or corporation, because they have a fully compromised machine or system inside of their business or network. This is where things really start to pick up speed for an attacker. This is where you really start wanting to get things done, because the deeper you go into this chain, the more risk you run of being caught. This is where you start making a lot more noise, because think of it as being inside of an enemy's base as opposed to standing outside of it and screaming your head off. You might get noticed if you're outside, but whatever, you're outside. In this case, you're actually inside, you're going through things, you're opening boxes, you're doing things like that. And then lastly, we have actions on the objectives. This is, in quotes, it says, with hands-on keyboard access, intruders accomplish their original goals. This is basically the last mile of the race. This is just where the attackers are going through steps to finish out what they started. So maybe they're looking for employee information or credit card numbers. this would be where they maybe come back for that information, where they reopen that link that they got in the command and control link, and they finally, sort of pull that information out packet by packet, bit by bit, so that it's not noticeable. And, they sort of download a file bit by bit. That actually is very hard to detect because people can do it, maybe they get one packet of information every 5 minutes and they have months to years to download this one file. That, as a professional, is very hard to detect because you're looking for people pulling files in mass quantities and gigabytes of data, not necessarily one packet for 5 minutes that's going to different IP addresses because somebody's using Tor or something like that. So this is really the overview of the cyber kill chain. If you want to know more about this, you can go to lockheedmartin.com. I just think it's something that is very informative. It sort of tells you like, hey, these are the steps that people are going to use. This is how this thing really works. And as a military person, that really speaks to me because it really lays out everything that's going on, and just sort of the whole process behind a malicious person coming at an asset or a business or a company or, even your home computer. We'll get more into reconnaissance and phishing emails, which I really want to cover because they're so common, in a later video. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you guys. Actually, I'm planning on posting a video later today, so I will see you guys later today. Thanks.